All right, everybody. So today we are doing lesson 2 of the French Revolution. And as talked about yesterday, this is we're moving into the tons of heads rolling, radicalized, blood in the streets part of all of this. So, at the end of lesson 1 yesterday, part B, I mentioned the rise of the Paris Commune. And again, this is going to be that group of radicalized people within the city that feel like the legislative assembly just hasn't gotten done what they've been promising and what they've been saying this revolution was going to be all about. And again, the deal is that, good things typically take time. And so, the Legislative Assembly is also trying to deal with, multiple issues that, of course, they have inherited thanks to Louis's mismanagement. And, so as always, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than most people understand politically. And, but that doesn't stop public opinion being public opinion. And the Paris Commune, of course, attacks the palace, and you end up with almost like a revolution inside the revolution. And they take the king captive, they kill guards, and essentially kind of make a stand that, like, hey, we're not necessarily in support of you guys anymore. And so a new national convention is brought to order, okay? And so now we have had, the original Third Estate turning into the National Assembly at the tennis court oath that then shifts into the Legislative Assembly that is then disbanded by the attack of the Paris Commune that is now moved to this new representative body known as the National Convention. Okay, and the convention says we're done working with Louis. And I mean, in all reality, he's not being cooperative whatsoever. So, it's not like he has given them any reason to continue to try to bring legislation to him that he's going to agree on. It's obvious the answer is going to be a resounding no every single time. So the convention's first major step, no big shocker, is to abolish the monarchy and establish a republic. But now the question is, okay, if we are going to abolish the monarchy, what are we going to do with our monarchs? Right? Like, what are we going to do with the king and queen? Well, you have people on two sides of the fence, right? You have people that, of course, are like, kill the king. But then you have people on the other side of the fence who are still revolutionaries that are saying, hang on, like, if you kill a king, you're just opening up an entirely new can of worms here. So, like, can we just take it down a notch? And the problem with radicalized politics is that anybody that is seen as being moderate or rational and trying to take emotion out of the equation a little bit here and looking at the big picture is viewed as like not being on board, okay? And like, oh, well, then you must be a royalist. And of course, there were a lot of people going, no, I'm not a royalist. I agree with that we need change, and I'm a member of, this revolutionary movement. But I don't know if chopping off the head of a king is necessarily the way to go. And so, that's kind of the big debate. And so who is it between? Well, here we go. This is your political party breakdown, basically, of the French Revolution. So the Jacobin Club is the original political party where you have the revolutionaries, come together. We want to see the downfall of the aristocracy. We want change. But then the Jacobin Club splits kind of into two factions where you have the Girondins, who are your more like moderate revolutionaries. They are typically not people living in Paris. These are people representing, kind of the countryside. Whereas the Mountain is going to represent the most radicalized, most extremist viewpoints, and are people mostly in Paris. Okay, so it's kind of like city versus country, moderate versus extremism. That's the Girondins versus the mountain. Well, it's no big shocker which group Maximilien Robespierre is going to belong to. He's going to belong to the mountain in the Jacobin Club. Very, very radicalized, again, very radicalized extremist group of people. And they're going to convince, with their very fiery rhetoric, of course, the National Convention. They're going to convince them to kill Louis. And on January 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI will be executed via guillotine. Okay, now the deal is like it says on the last sentence there in that slide, a new crisis is at hand. Because I'm sorry, we're still 18th century Europe. You can't just chop the head off of a king without there being some consequences. And so you have Austria, Prussia, Spain, Portugal, Britain, and the Dutch Republic form this coalition. Okay, and the whole viewpoint of the coalition was, of course, to definitely try to extract Marie Antoinette and her surviving children, you know, and try to restore the monarchy with her and their son. Well, of course, a lot of people that were moderate revolutionaries were kind of going, I told you, like, this is going to create more problems that we're really not equipped to deal with right now, because we're not even all on the same page as to what to do. Okay. And so the National Convention, the new government of France gets hyper, right? That they get scared, they get nervous, they get hyper. And it's kind of like, oh my God, we got to figure out what to do, because now we have all of Europe bearing down on us, and we've really got to all unite, and we've got to come together so that, that we figure this out, right? We figure out what to do all together. Well, Maximilien Robespierre, just kind of sachets, and he's like, well, I've been saying all along that those that aren't completely and 100% with us are against us. I've been saying that all along. Marat and I have been telling you that there's enemies of the revolution everywhere. I mean, and now's the time to sniff those people out, because we don't have time for anyone to disagree with us. Well, the National Convention, of course, is like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're so right. You've been saying this all along. And so they give Robespierre pretty much carte blanche power, along with his 12-man little group of similarly minded extremist, the mountain member, that's the people that make up the Committee of Public Safety are of his same like mind. And their policy is basically like, scare them straight. If you are not 100% in agreement with our extremist, radicalized, revolutionary ideologies, then we're going to kill you. I mean, and so there's a reason why from 1793 to 1794, the French Revolution has the Reign of Terror happen. It's because, ironically named, the Committee of Public Safety and Robespierre go on a killing spree. Okay? So what they did is they sent guillotines out across all of France, and they would send spies into every village, town, and city. And it was, if they heard a whisper even of dissension amongst people, someone said, I don't know if we should have killed the king. Even just something as not saying, it could be someone saying something as innocent as that, like that's still a revolutionary, that still believes in the cause, but just makes the comment like, I just don't know. Off with your head, man. I mean, like, that's how it went. That's how it went. And so they were chopping people's heads off without trial, really. I mean, it was pretty much like someone heard you say that you didn't agree, so you must be against us. And I mean, they were killing people, men, women, even kids as young as like 12, 13 years old. Okay. Between 1793 and 1794, they're going to kill almost 40,000 people. And the queen is included in this number. Okay. So, Marie Antoinette is charged with treason, but her trial is really very, very sad. It's kind of gut wrenching to study her trial because number one, here her husband was beheaded, and here she is in prison, but yet isolated from her two surviving children. Her daughter, I can't remember, she's like maybe in her teens or getting close to her teenage years, during all of this. And their youngest son is like 7, 8 years old. And so, and again, they're isolated from her. And, here Louis has been beheaded. I mean, can you imagine? And come on, they don't really need a trial to kill her. I mean, okay, so that in and of itself right there, the fact that they have a trial should just tell you it was a sideshow. Okay, this is meant to humiliate her in her last days and to just add insult to injury. I mean, and this is a cat playing with a mouse. I mean, they knew they were going to kill her. And again, they put her through all of this just out of spite and cruelty, really. And so, if you're kind of like, well, what did they do to her? Well, her children, the little boy and girl, I think the girl's name, if I remember correctly, is Marie. And then the little boy's name is not Louis Joseph, was the Dauphin who died right before the French Revolution broke out. So I think this is like Louis Charles, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But it's a Louis. And anyways, they are both being abused by their guards and treated horribly. The conditions in which they are living are really, really bad. But during the trial, they threaten Louis, the little boy, the little 8-year-old boy, with basically like continued awful abuse and maybe even death if he doesn't testify against his own mother and against his aunt that they had sexually abused him. And of course, it's not true. And even Marie Antoinette during the trial is like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is not true. I would never do this. And I mean, you can say what you want about Marie Antoinette. Trust me, I get it. She's got some strikes against her. But she did love her children, and not in an inappropriate way. I mean, that this was all created and staged to be emotional and psychological warfare on her and a cat playing with a mouse. I mean, because again, I mean, they kill her. So, again, the end of her life, you can't help but feel pretty sorry for her. And what's sad is that 2 years later, the little boy is going to die because of the abuse that he sustains in prison. And then the daughter, after the Reign of Terror is over, will be released to Austria. And her life is really, trust me, not a bed of roses even after that. So, it's just really the what ends up happening to the royal family is really pretty god awful. So this is just a quick bio over her, so feel free to watch that. But continuing on with the Reign of Terror, just to give you an example of, the bloodshed. So in Lyon, France, the guillotine, they were chopping so many people's heads off that the guillotine was having to be sharpened several times a day. And basically they were like, this is going to take too long. We have too many people to kill. Because you have to think, if they killed about 40,000 people in a year, you're looking at a little over 3,000 a month. I mean, guys, that means that they would wipe out all of Gatesville in about 2 months. So, and this is 18th century France with guillotines. So when the guillotine proved to go too slow because they were having to like stop and sharpen it, they dug these huge mass graves and shot grape shot into these people. And if you don't understand what grape shot is, it's like bird shot. Like, okay, so it's like, you know, shrapnel coming out of a gun. And so it's little pieces of metal going into your body. And so a lot of times it's not enough damage to any one particular organ to kill you, but it's of course agonizing, and you're going to sit there and bleed out for God knows, you know, how many hours or maybe even days. And so it's a horrible way to go. I mean, I would choose the guillotine over grape shot. You know, and so then they're just falling into these mass graves, and a lot of them were buried alive. And then in Nantes, France, they were sticking people on barges, big boats, and literally like tying them all up together and sinking the ships, like, or sinking the barges or the boats. But you have to look at the last sentence of this slide. Clergy and nobles made up about 15% of the victims, while the rest were from the Third Estate. Now, if you remember the statistics from Monday, you're going, well, I mean, statistically speaking, okay, like that's still, that 15% is still a good amount of people percentage wise. But I mean, come on, the Third Estate are the people who are supposed to be the ones like this whole revolution is for, right? And that all of this is being done for, and yet we're killing Third Estate members. And again, yes, some of the people who were killed were definitely like royalists and supportive of the restoration of the king and queen. But there were also a large amount of people that were killed during the Reign of Terror that just simply didn't buy in wholeheartedly to the radicalism that was the Committee of Public Safety and Maximilian Robespierre, and they lost their lives over it. You know, they're basically sitting there going, excuse me, we are revolutionaries, but we're just not in crazy land right now. Like, can we please just back things up a little bit and calm down? And again, they lost their lives over being moderates. So looking at the opposite side of the same coin, in terms of the Committee of Public Safety and their radicalism, there are actually some positive things that come out of them being so highly extremist, and that is that they abolished slavery. France is going to be the first country in Europe to do that, setting the stage, of course, for, you know, abolition to then spread and happen in other countries throughout Europe, which is definitely a plus. Also, women were allowed to go and observe the National Convention and even speak. That definitely had never happened in politics at this stage. And they also passed education for all, but it couldn't be widely implemented because, I mean, come on, France is a bit of a chaotic mess at the moment. But, you know, those are actually, looking back on it, really good things that the Committee of Public Safety did, albeit also highly radical things that they did, because no one else was doing stuff like that at the time. It was going highly against the norm. You know, and so, and yes, there debates obviously have been made about, you know, was the Committee of Public Safety necessary, kind of like a necessary evil, or was it not? I mean, you know, and you can debate that honestly until you're kind of blue in the face. But, you know, these were obviously a few things that were good. Another thing that they do, however, is they de-Christianize France. So no one's allowed to be Christian anymore. And I mean, and this is what's so crazy. I'm like, y'all really took the time to do this in the middle of everything that's going on. Okay, so they change the Notre Dame into a temple of reason, and that picture is actually very accurate. They had drapes that they put like all over the stained glass. Thank God they didn't break it out, because I've seen the stained glass at Notre Dame and it's absolutely breathtaking. I'm not even Catholic and I cried. I mean, and so they covered it all up, thank goodness. And guess who they put a statue of in the middle of the Temple of Reason? Like it's, of course, it's not Montesquieu or Voltaire or any of the Enlightenment people. No, it's Jean-Paul Marat. Okay. The crazy doctor who had the newspaper, remember, the one that like had to sit in a bath and like even lived in the sewers of Paris for a time? Yeah, that's who we have a statue of in the middle of Notre Dame for a while. They changed the calendar from a 7-day week to a 10-day week, because obviously 7 days is biblical, and on the seventh day he rested. And so if you have 10 days, well, can't have a Sunday. And so obviously these changes are not well received, but yet again, it's, if you don't agree with us, we'll chop your head off. And so people either practiced in secret, or did what they could to not get their head chopped off. So if you're wondering, like, how in the world by the summer of 1794 the French had largely defeated the coalition, well, if there is one thing that chopping heads off does, is it definitely makes people go, okay, like, hey, I'm listening. And guess what? Robespierre, dude, I love you. You're my man. You're awesome. And I agree with absolutely everything that you're doing, 100%. So I've been telling my students, I'm like, if somebody rolled into town today and was like, if you don't agree with me 100%, then I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to probably kill your husband and your kids. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, it's self-preservation and human nature at its best. The scare 'em straight tactic does unify France in the fact that it raises a massive army, because it's basically, if you don't go fight for us, then you must be against us and we're going to kill you anyway. And so they're able to fight back the coalition pretty effectively. And then, of course, once you kill the king and queen, what is the coalition at that point in time then really truly fighting for? Okay, you've killed the whole reason why we're coming in here and trying to fight this revolution. There's nothing to restore at this point. And so by 1794, there's really no more need for this massively extreme radicalized policy that is the Reign of Terror. And so the National Convention, starts to kind of pull the plug a little bit on all of this and try to kind of return to a more moderate political stance. And yes, there is one man so shocking that is against this, because he wants more heads. He wants more blood. He wants more, he sees problems continuing in, political espionage and whatever else. And the National Convention realizes very quickly, he's never going to let this go. So we have to kill Robespierre. So they vote to condemn him and kill him via guillotine. Haha, poetic justice, right? But here's what's so crazy. So he finds out that they're coming for him, right? And he tries to commit suicide. But I guess I think he flinches. And so when the gun goes off, the bullet goes like right here and just kind of like blows his jaw off and doesn't kill him. Of course, you can imagine how much agony he's in, but I mean, hey, that's okay with me. It should be okay with y'all too. So it blows half of his jaw off. And so when they find him, he's still alive. He's still cognizant, and it's clear what he's tried to do. And they have to like drag him with like half his face gone to the guillotine to chop his head off. But I mean, hey, there was ever one more deserving of kind of a gruesome death, I'd say it was Robespierre. I'm saying that there's plenty more people in history that are deserving of gruesome deaths, but in this particular unit, Robespierre is the man that's warranted. All right. So this is honestly, those of you online, this is all we're getting to today. Tomorrow we're going to watch this video at the beginning of class as a really good refresher of all of this information. And then I'm going to finish the last 3 slides before they take the formative assessment. With you guys, I'm going to go ahead and finish talking about the last 3 slides. That way, lesson 2 is all within one video. But, if you're kind of like, I'm kind of done for now and you want to, just do the rest tomorrow, that's fine. Just pause me, watch that, and be done. But moving forward, here we go with the directory. Like I said, obviously the Reign of Terror is if you look at the political pendulum, it is, it swung to the high extremes during the Reign of Terror. And now that political pendulum is moving back down and kind of settling back in the middle. And so you have a more moderate middle class that takes over, and it's all about, stopping the Reign of Terror and the crazy. So the Constitution of 1795 is drafted, and it sets up 2 legislative houses. So, okay, we're going to try to get back to what we always, wanted to do, which was, creating a government based on Enlightenment ideologies that mirrors the Americans or even mirrors the British. So you have the lower house, or the Council of 500, as one of the 2 legislative houses. And then you have the upper house, or the Council of Elders, that then accepts or rejects the proposed laws. Now, members of both houses are then chosen by electors, which are the people qualified to vote in an election. So the election process is not free to everybody. It's only the electors that are allowed to vote. Well, only those who owned or rented property worth a certain amount could be electors. So there were only about 30,000 people in the whole nation qualified to be electors. Okay, so obviously this is going to skew who is in the lower and upper houses, and it's just going to turn into the rich man's game all over again. Okay, instead of having one super wealthy guy in control, now we just have like a whole bunch of wealthy people in control. So under the new Constitution, you have the executive portion of the government. It's called the Directory. Okay, and you have a committee of 5 men known as the Council of Elders that, again, they make up the executive branch. Okay, so we talked about the legislative branch. The executive branch is this Directory Council of Elders. So it lasts from 1795 to 1799, but of course, highly, highly corrupted. It's no big shock there due to just how they've set up the electoral process. So France is still broke. They kind of revert back in a lot of ways to, high taxes when people are already really strapped and struggling. The little ice age still rages on. But France has to dig itself out some kind of way. And, but you start to see the old kind of like, I know this sounds, but like the old good old boy system kind of come in play where it's like, well, we really have to have taxes to create revenue to pay off all of this debt. But then again, like the Council of Elders skews it to where, of course, they don't pay as many taxes, like, like perks of power type of situations. And again, this is all things that this whole revolution has been fought to try to avoid. So people start to get frustrated with the Directory, and to stay in power, what they do is they rely on, of course, the military. They rely on the military to be kind of their strong arm to keep people in check and make sure that they remain in seats of leadership. Well, one highly, highly popular military general who the people absolutely adore turns on the Directory in a pretty brilliant coup. And Napoleon Bonaparte, by 1799, is actually going to be in complete control of France. And honestly, there were a lot of people in France that were a-okay with this, because he was looked at as the hero of the French Revolution. And the Directory, again, had become this corrupted body that people didn't trust anymore. And so they put their complete faith in one man, because come on, like, that's kind of what, in all reality, all of Europe is used to, right? They're used to one person being in control. And they all love Napoleon. They look at him, again, as a hero of the people and a hero of the revolution. So why not let him lead us? Because all of the legislative bodies and the Directory didn't do a good job and became just as corrupted as a king. So why not have a military dictator? And that's how we get Napoleon Bonaparte in power in France. And that's where I'm going to stop. And we will pick back up on Napoleon and his rise to power, his whole backstory, and then, of course, the Napoleonic Wars. We'll start all of that on Friday. So see you guys then. And again, good luck on your formatives that I will assign tomorrow. See you later.